Good afternoon, everyone. This is Friday, April 22nd. This is a joint committee session between our Education and Culture and Health and Human Services Committee to have a work session to talk about the proposed FY23 operating budget. We have several items on the agenda this afternoon and a number of guests that have joined us who I will introduce shortly. But the items on the agenda include discussion over the school-based services and partnerships, school wellness centers, the Newcomers Initiative, school mental health services, and then school-based mental health and support services and partnerships, including high school wellness centers, school health services, linkages to learning, cluster projects, and more. Thank you so much to Ms. Yao and Ms. Rodriguez-Hernandez and Ms. McGuire, who worked collaboratively to prepare this afternoon's packets. And this opportunity before us to have a comprehensive discussion as it relates to the budget to address a growing need that we've all discussed in a number of different forums is so pressing and so important. And the collaboration between the Department of Health and Human Services and MCPS has never been more important than it is right now. Thousands of our kids and our families are counting on this partnership and allegiance. And so I want to thank everybody for your continued dedication, and we look forward to diving into this afternoon's discussion. I'll turn it over to Chairman Rice to make some opening comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And let me just say this, it's very interesting because everybody is talking about what we know. On yesterday, USA Today ran an article that was titled "How a Counselor Shortage is Hurting Students Struggling with Anxiety and Depression." And the follow-up to that headline was that school counselor retention was already a problem before the COVID-19 pandemic, according to mental health experts, and they say it's only gotten worse in recent years. Here's our challenge. Our challenge is that we, collectively, are all committed to doing everything we can to ensure the healthiness and well-being of our kids. Part of the challenge is that the system that involves all of the folks that we need to hire and to put in place to make these things happen is not always cooperating. And it's going to require us to put forth even more due diligence. That's what we're seeing as part of this budget. That's what we've seen as a part of the special appropriations that the council has done, that the board has requested, that Dr. McKnight has worked with us on. We all collectively know what it is that we need to do. The challenge is to make it happen is a lot more difficult and sometimes beyond our individual control. And while we commit to making sure that our schools throughout the nation can put different career pathways in front of so many of our students, that takes time. That is not something that happens overnight in terms of people changing their majors to become psychology majors and coming out ready to work and enter into our school workforce. And so from that standpoint, this is going to take some time. And I know that folks who we've heard in our public hearing testimony have insisted we do something now. The reality is there are some things we can do now, and it's associated with some of the things. I don't want to steal Councilmember Navarro's thunder, but certainly when doing wellness centers and having staffing that can help and assist and support with some of these things that may not be full-blown psychologists, a caring voice, a person who can lend an ear does matter. Those mentors that all of us have experienced in our lives have helped us through some of our most difficult times. And they didn't always have to have a psychology degree. So I think that, again, with us continuing to be innovative, but also committed to making sure we get to that point of where we have a robust cohort of personnel that are in our schools to address the needs of our kids is incredibly important. But I know that it also takes time, one in which we're committed to sticking with. I know that I can't speak for future councils, especially since I won't be here, but this council has remained committed, as has this county executive, and certainly doing everything we can, along with all of our Board of Education leadership and school leadership, to try and make sure that we meet the needs of our kids. And so I just really want to say thank you for everybody for being on the same page, for us all committing to do the work and to try and get us to a place we know is an even better place for all of our kids, staff, and personnel within our schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Rice. Next, we're going to hear from Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, everyone. This particular session, I think it's just so significant and very symbolic of a real trajectory that I know many of us have had during our time in public service. And anytime I would have conversations with, especially with teachers, one of the threads was always this notion that, you know, student achievement is not just connected to what happens in the classroom, but there are so many things that take place outside the classroom that then manifest themselves once that student walks into a school building. And in Montgomery County, I think that that has been central to how we have approached education. We, from the very beginning, have always sought to figure out ways to collaborate, incorporate, to have a multi-agency, multi-departmental approach. I think of the Kennedy Cluster Project as a template, and seeking always those kinds of leverage points so that we can provide the most robust and most comprehensive, the most holistic support to students and families, but also to our staff, so that everybody can have an optimal experience. There's no doubt, we all know it, we are in a crisis. We know what has happened in this past 2 and some months, 2 years and some months. We just recently, as last night, heard real compelling testimony. I literally had to block my camera because I was in tears, hearing the desperation and the extreme stress that many people in our community are still dealing with, because the pandemic literally pulled the rug under so many in ways that now are going to be very difficult for them to get back up on their feet. However, I think that this particular conversation and this budget in particular will be able to cement some really important models, approaches that will, I think, illustrate how nimble we really can be and how we are able to leverage what we already have out there. I read the packet and it said something about how, you know, the issue of culturally and linguistically proficient mental health professionals was something that we have been discussing in recent years. It really has been more than recent years. It's something we've been discussing for a long time. And I think that there has been some extraordinary efforts that have been taken up. But I am very, very grateful that there has been an embracing of this notion that we can start by putting in place some support systems within the schools that will build over time. As Chairman Rice said, maybe we're not able to right away get all of the social workers and all of the psychologists, everyone in there right away, but we can start building that through. We can start with some of our youth development specialists, positive youth development specialists. We can begin to put that into motion. And then as we go, we can all hold hands and build that pipeline. I guess I should say you guys can hold hands because I won't be on the council, but I'll be watching as we build that pipeline. And we're so fortunate, you know, to just have places like Montgomery College, USG, et cetera. So, you know, all this to say that these budget sessions for me have a very, very special meaning, because again, this is the last time I will be participating here, but they come together with a very interesting historic component, with years and years of a lot of really positive contributions from not just council members who are here present, or those of you who are present, but then former council members, executives, former heads of departments, et cetera, who really began to put forth the foundation. I can only imagine where we would be if that had not occurred in the past. So with that, I just really, truly just want to say thank you for everyone's ability to just suspend some of the doubts and some of the pushback, and be willing to move forward and build and build and continue to build, because our young people, as I said before, are in crises. Families are still in crises. And hopefully this will begin to go a long way to address some of that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the comments from my colleagues. And as we're 2 years into this pandemic and transitioning into the endemic, we know that mental illness and the demand for psychological services are at an all-time high, not only here in Montgomery County, but across the country. So much so is the demand so high and the need so great that the American Psychological Association has called this period a crisis for our kids. And we have laid a foundation. We have done a lot of work. And I just want to reemphasize that we need to redouble our efforts, and we need to work overtime because our kids are demanding it. They are literally shouting out to us. They're crying out to us for help. And it takes a lot of work and a lot of coordination to provide these services and to set up these systems, but we have to do it. And as much as the groundwork had been laid for the last previous years, we need to catch up. And I would normally say I look forward to this conversation, but I'm actually not looking forward to this conversation because it's a tough conversation to figure these services out because the need is so great. And so I'll engage in this conversation, and we will figure out how we hire within a sector that is in great demand, understanding the landscape, not only locally, but nationally. But we have to do this. And I fear and am concerned for so many of our young people because they're showing us the stress that they're under. And we owe it to them, and we owe it to their parents and our greater community to figure this out ASAP. And so with that, I'll yield back so we can start this conversation.
Thank you, Council Vice President Glass. I will now turn it over to Councilmember Juando to say a couple of comments as well, and then to President Wolf, followed by Dr. McKnight and Dr. Kroll. If you'd like to make some opening comments too, please feel free to do so. Councilmember Juando.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Chair. Good to be with everybody. Appreciate all your work as always. And a lot's been said. I'll just add this. I think, we've been having our budget hearings the last few nights, and we've heard from one of the components several times of our school psychologists and our counselors who have talked about the ratios that they're seeing and the difficulty that they have in addressing the needs of their students because of these ratios. We've heard from folks that want to separate the counseling services from some of the paperwork and 504 plan services, right? We have some very clear recommendations that have been made from not only our students, and I appreciate Councilmember Glass saying that as well, that they're crying out. They are, and I know the school board members, President Wolf and her colleagues know, but we're hearing it as well. But also the providers, right? The folks who are on the ground in the school system saying, we can't do this. We are at our limit. And people who've never testified before, I followed up with several of the people, the psychologists, never testified, didn't know about the apparatus, but are to the point of this is at a breaking point, and not dissimilar to the nation, right? We've all been through so much, and we have made progress, but we are in a totally different ball game, and the progress we've made heretofore, we have to accelerate it greatly, and I know we all know that. That's why we're here, and I'm excited to continue that work and to build upon it. There's a lot to do. And one of the conversations that, we'll have today, hopefully, and legislature just ended, is how do we take advantage of our homegrown talent and make sure people who have some level of mental health training, maybe if it's not what's currently accepted, how do we get that into our school system and to our students, right? It's something that we've been trying to crack for a long time. and prior to my time on the council, but we have to accelerate progress on things like that. And so I'm glad we're here. I appreciate all the work that's been done. I look forward to working with everybody to make sure we get our students what they need, because it's, as we know, it's a crisis. So appreciate it, Mr. President, and turn it back to you.
Thank you. So the partnership here is so vital, and we're fortunate to have a very deeply committed Board of Education who is such a strong ally to the council and vice versa. President Wolf, thank you for joining us. Please make some opening comments.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rice and President Albornoz and members of the Education and Culture and Health and Human Services Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to represent the Board of Education at this joint committee review of school-based mental health supports in Montgomery County, and with our partners at Montgomery County Public Schools and with our partners in Montgomery County. This is such an important discussion, and it's so needed. I just want to reiterate some of the comments that we've heard. Our kids are in crisis, and this is a must-do. We have to figure out how to make this happen. But first and foremost, the mental health and well-being of our students and staff have been a priority of the Board of Education for many years. The needs have been significantly elevated because of the impact of COVID-19. But MCPS is committed to the academic success and to the physical, social, and psychological well-being of every one of our nearly 160,000 students. We know that students perform better academically when they are healthy in mind, body, and spirit. One of the tenets of the MCPS strategic plan is a safe and healthy school learning environment. Students are more likely to succeed when families are engaged and when the students are in a safe and welcoming environment to learn. One example of our focus is our Be Well 365 initiative that helps ensure students have the necessary skills to become positive members of the school and broader community, to manage their emotions, to build academic and social resilience, to identify and assess support for themselves or for a friend, to peacefully resolve conflict, and to make positive decisions. Another example is our restorative justice program. Restorative justice is an approach to building community, self-care, and conflict resolution. It is a social justice platform allowing students to actively engage and problem solve. Through our cadre of school counselors, psychologists, social workers, restorative justice instructional specialists, English for speakers of other languages, transition counselors, pupil personnel workers, and other professionals, MCPS is committed to the mental health and well-being of our students and staff. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss the MCPS FY 2023 operating budget, and particularly school-based mental health supports. I and the members of the Board of Education look forward to working with the County Council members and to complete the budget process. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, President Wolf. Now we will hear from Dr. Monifa McKnight.
Thank you and good afternoon, President Albornoz, Chairman Rice, members of the Education Culture Committee and Health and Human Services Committee. I too am very happy that we're having the conversation. The topic of the conversation is always one that is quite daunting for so many reasons that we all are aware of and have experienced very intensely over the past year or 2 years. It's so important, and I want to reiterate what Ms. Wolf just mentioned. We recognize this as a core part of the future of what we have to continue to plan for and be responsible for, be proactive and reactive, and that is around mental health and support. And the way in which we've identified this as a key priority, and I elevate that the board and the system this year created a pillar in our new strategic plan that clearly states that as a school system, as a Board of Education, there's going to be an intentional focus on the well-being of our students and staff. And we know that that's important, and we know that that won't all look the same in all 209 schools, nor is the need the same for every single student in the system. And with that said, I appreciate so much all of the feedback that we get from our stakeholders, our students, our families, and our parents, because they tell us the real life experiences that are making these challenges play out in the way that we see them playing out in our schools and in our community. And when I think about mental health in Montgomery County, schools are part of that. But as I believe it was Council Member Rice and Navarro reiterated earlier, this is a national issue. And we're feeling it in Montgomery County, but what we have a responsibility to do is know and understand what is happening in Montgomery County, why is it happening, and who is it happening to, and what are we going to do for them? And that's in the county as well as the school. And there are two specific points that come to mind as we address these issues of mental support and well-being of our students and staff that we have to always be cognizant of. The first is that there are many different types of support that is going to be needed to address this issue. Some of it is in staffing, some of it is in programming, some of it is in health resources in a different way that's been provided. It's a menu of services that we're going to need to address this. And that's important to call out because even as we talk about resources, we've got to continue to be very specific. Even if we are thinking about bringing staff members in to support the needs of the students, the training has to be very important. The staff members have to be very aware of who the community is that they're serving. How do we get to know the things that are impacting the students when they're in the school, but they're also impacting them outside of the school? So when they come back to school, we're equipped to know what that is and how to differentiate that support. The second component that is very important as we consider this is that every bit of the resources that we're discussing, all of the plans, all of it has to be done in partnership. So I know we've talked about the partnerships in our county and the strength of those partnerships being very important, and we acknowledge that. And the strength of our county, which the school system leverages all the time, is that we have strong partnerships. But when we think about the resources and the programs and everything that's needed, one can't operate without the other. And when I think about even our wellness centers, it's a perfect example of that. We create the space and have that space at our high schools, and we want to expand that. We have to work in very close collaboration with our partners at the Department of Health and Human Services, who are amazing at helping us to figure out, all right, well, if this is what we're doing, how are we going to make sure the supports that need to be inside of that wellness center are appropriate and can be staffed to provide the service in the way that it needs to be done. So I elevate those 2 points because as we enter into this discussion more specifically today about wellness, it's just important to center it around how do we do this together and how do we think about it not being one answer to many complex issues that we will be working with our students through and working with our staff to support. Coming back to our operating budget absolutely reflects new resources for a number of initiatives that are ongoing programs that support mental health and well-being in our schools. For an example, one we talked about the other day in our meeting was the Welcoming Center. Whether students come from another district or from another part of Maryland or from another state or another country, it's going to be important to know who they are and making sure that their families feel welcome. Because if their families feel welcome when they come into the school system, we then don't have to work with trying to engage a disengaged student because we never provide the opportunity for them to become disengaged. We're engaging them in a meaningful way, in a very upfront way. And so we're being proactive in how we do that. And that's called out specifically in our operating budget as a priority. I also want to quickly go to federal funding because as we shared earlier in our meeting this week, our federal funding is a really important part of this. And we use federal funding to help expand well-being and mindfulness spaces in our schools. It's one of the most beautiful things that you can see when you walk into our schools who are utilizing those mindful spaces and seeing how they're helping to support staff and students in a meaningful way by emphasizing the importance of mindfulness and focusing on awareness, how you reduce anxiety, all of those things that are important. I've had conversations with fifth graders sitting on the carpet with them about the things that they believe they need to decrease anxiety. And the responses that they share with us are so meaningful and so important to them. And we have to implement that for the fifth grader who says, I need a mental break in between time in which I'm taking one test from one other thing. And that may be me having building blocks on my table just to have a mental break away for 5 minutes, so that the anxiety I would normally take into taking the test as a fifth grader, I'm not going into that experience with, because I had a 5-minute break. And to the high schooler who gives another example of something that's very different for them. But again, an example of how we have to be very innovative, hear from our students and our families about what mindfulness and wellness means for them to be able to implement these partnerships in a meaningful way. We've used federal funding to support a telehealth option for our district that provides prompt options for students being able to obtain advice and support to cope with life challenges. We did not have that before in the past, before the pandemic, and it's pushed us into this space, which we welcome, which is how can we make sure that access is there and appropriate and at the time in the way that our students need it. And so those are a few examples of what we're using for federal funding. Going back to the operating budget, of course, we're very excited that we're using resources, or we're planning to use those resources to expand the number of community schools from 19 to 26 across the district. Again, not making the partnership or the access to the resources that families need for their overall well-being, which then benefits the student, as a difficult a service to reach. When it's there in the school and it's there and it's able to bring those services to the community through partnership, then that makes it more accessible and meaningful to a family that overall then becomes a more healthy family. I'll just kind of end on one last note, which is around our MCPS and our commitment to developing an ongoing anti-racist system, and doing that through the audit. This audit is an opportunity for us to provide a comprehensive, proactive, district-wide review of our entire system. We've involved parents, students, guardians, staff members, community members who are just interested. Anyone who will listen, and anyone who is interested in saying, I want to be a part of how we build a school system that's going to ultimately make everyone in the school system feel valued and know that this is a school system that is made for me, personalizing it. And it's a collaborative effort, and we look forward to making sure we release our report, but most importantly, beyond the report, saying how is this going to be actualized for Montgomery County Public Schools in the context of who we are today. And I look forward to us having many more conversations about it. So I just mentioned a few initiatives, but these are really important and ongoing initiatives that really focus on the center of the conversation that we're going to have today. And I just want to thank you all for the opportunity for us to come forward and discuss the 23 operating budget, specifically our school-based mental health supports. And I look forward to us continuing to work with our many partners in County Council to complete the FY23 operating budget on behalf of the needs of the students and staff within our system. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Kroll.
Good afternoon, Council President Albornoz and Council members, Council Chair Rice, and all the Council members and the folks that have joined us today. I made comments to you, large overarching comments about the budget yesterday, so I don't need to repeat any of that, but I do want to weigh in on this particular issue because mental health, as you well know, is a wheelhouse and a place that is close to my heart always. I've said repeatedly over the years that the mental health system in the country is not working, has been broken, has been not effective in many respects for many years. That we are in a crisis is undeniable. And to Councilmember Glass's comment about the American Psychological Association, my home body, I am mildly annoyed with them at the level of disingenuity about this because it has been a crisis for many years, and they have seen it and known it and remarked on it. We've talked about it in this county. You go back to our OLO reports from previous years. So this is not a new thing. The challenge now is that we are in a perfect storm of a crisis because we have both the impacts of COVID and the impacts of our efforts to try to deal with COVID that have piled up on our children and are too numerous to mention here, plus the fact that we have a growing problem with the pipeline in terms of mental health professionals who are going to be available, who are even, in fact, entering the field. And so there is a challenge ahead of us that is a long-term challenge and a short-term challenge. I think where we are now, I think the other piece of this, just to be, as I think about this, the challenge for us is not to think about this in a traditional frame, hiring more therapists, hiring more psychologists, hiring more social workers. We have to do that. But given where we are in terms of the shortages, we have to do some other things in terms of shoring up the services that we have in place, but also working to expand our capacity. You know, the CE's budget has proposed high school wellness center as standing, rolling out in interim phases, focus more on the mental health pieces, and I have no doubt that the council today will actively entertain Councilmember Navarro's recommendations for expanding that capacity to make sure we have what we need, what our students need. The other thing is that now and long term, we have to, going forward, I think, look at redesigning our services and our systems, figuring out how to repurpose and retrain people, and how we grow and create pipelines from the community. One of the things that I'm looking at and the department is looking at is trying to find a way to partner with the schools, with MCPS and with the colleges to identify people and bring them into a pathway that will lead them to a career in human services and hopefully mental health. So that's our long-term strategy. In the moment, I think you've heard Dr. McKnight talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on now that are therapeutic without being therapy and without being done by therapists. And I think that is an important and vital element of this work. Therapy and mental health professionals we think of as people who come in the door typically when things are broken. We need to be thinking about how do we promote their healthy development and what do we do to help them relieve their anxiety now. And there are many things that we need to be engaged in doing to make that happen. So this conversation is a starting point, and this year's budget, however it lands, will be a starting point in that process. I'm happy to know that we will be working with MCPS to make sure we are giving our children what they need to thrive, not just during the school year, but year-round and in community, because at some point they stop going to school and they go back to the community, and we need to make sure that those gains that they've made and the connections they've made during the school year, especially with supportive services, are available to them throughout the year and throughout the community. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Council President, and ready to start this conversation.
Thanks. I'll just end with this. I agree with everything that's been said, and we all have agreed that we are in a crisis. And I think we all have acknowledged that while we have to focus on behavioral health specialists in addition to intervention services, as well as preventative services, we have to get to some of the underlying issues as well. And so as we look at extracurricular activities, as we look at rental assistance, as we look at food security, all of those stresses that are adding to families' anguish at the moment are all components of this broader and complex issue that our youth and families are facing right now. And so we have to acknowledge that. And also, to some degree, the social construct in how we are looking at social media and other aspects that are exacerbating some of what we are seeing on the ground. I was compelled by the testimony from a parent earlier this week that said that her child had been beaten and the video had been posted online with a specific intent to get as many likes as possible to develop more of a social media following by the perpetrators of the crime. So there's a lot of issues that we are tackling here cohesively and congruently, but we all are working collaboratively together to address them. So with that, Ms. Yao, I'll turn it over to you to walk us through the first component of our packet. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. In preparation for this discussion of the fiscal year 23 operating budget, and because of all the concerns related to mental health needs of youth and families that all of our public representatives just discussed or highlighted, the chairs of the joint committee requested a comprehensive inventory of mental health supports that are provided in and through schools by MCPS and DHHS. So that's provided in the first part of your packet as background. There's a landscape on school-based mental health and support services. The responses from MCPS are described in the packet starting on page 2, and they describe the mental health professionals for engagement, schools, and special education services that have been budgeted in fiscal year 20 through fiscal year 23, as well as additional resources supporting student well-being. DHHS provides a comprehensive array of mental health services in children, youth, and family services and behavioral health and crisis services that support youth in schools or referred by schools and their families. And the table on page 5 summarizes the direct mental health services provided to students that are administered by DHHS. In addition, the most recent school crisis referral report is attached on circles 16 through 21 of your packet. And council staff thought it was important to note that all middle schools and high schools and 80% of elementary schools have made crisis referrals in fiscal year 22, with the largest number coming from middle schools. So, you know, again, to kind of contextualize all this information, council staff wanted to have the joint committees consider that there, you know, are many continuing, recently increased and new efforts to provide mental health services across the continuum of prevention to treatment. And many of these supports have been part of an emergency response to the pandemic. Consequently, greater delineation of roles and coordination of services between DHHS and MCPS would improve service delivery and facilitate strategic decision-making about future needs. DHHS is also available to discuss efforts related to key stakeholders, recruitment, culturally competent, racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse mental health workforce. I think Dr. Kroll had talked a little bit about that already. Council staff also notes that DHHS should be central to the expansion of efforts because of its expertise in the delivery of school-based therapeutic services, and also because its flexibility and resource deployment and overall breadth of mental health interventions as part of its core mission. Council staff also suggests that DHHS, MCPS, and council staff convene regularly over the coming months to identify remaining service needs, to understand how to best deliver services strategically in alignment with each agency's core mission and across the public-private service delivery system. And finally, the Joint Committee should schedule a meeting outside of budget to talk in greater depth about efforts to improve and build a comprehensive system of mental health service delivery in schools.
Ms. Yao, if you can pause there for 1 second. Councilmember Navarro has raised your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one issue, of course, that I know we all have been concerned about is the middle school referrals and how this is an area of extraordinary concern. So I was wondering if you could describe a little bit some of the options or some of the strategies that you're thinking about as we begin to leverage and enhance some of these supports. But how would that trickle down to the middle school, or what are some possible interventions that can capitalize and leverage what we are going to be, what we end up, funding, but to also provide those supports to the middle schools as well. That is my first question. And then Ms. Yao, when you were talking about coming back to the Joint Committee so we can have a conversation about options, so were you referring to the broad issue of mental health, or specifically to the cultural and linguistic proficiency? Was that folded into that? I just wasn't sure.
Really the broad issue, but of course the cultural competence and linguistic capabilities is a specific issue that is at the forefront of the Joint Committee's concern. So that, of course, could be another item to follow up on.
Okay, so just because so I don't forget, my only observation to that is that, as has been already discussed, I think the Joint Committee has had years of conversations about this. So I think in order for us to be efficient, I would respectfully request that instead a work group or this coalition here to come to the Joint Committee with some specific tangible action items versus us having yet one more discussion. That would be my only observation on that one. But in terms of the middle schools, are there any particular areas that will be, that will be targeting those statistics are pretty incredible in terms of what's happening in our middle schools. And anecdotally, I've heard a lot of it because I do have a nephew in one of the middle schools that has had quite a number of issues. Can anybody tell me a little bit about what's going on in the middle schools?
Dr. McKnight, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you. So one big part of what we've learned about this whole mental health crisis now that our students have returned to school is, earlier I mentioned there's not one answer, and we're really looking at it in terms of what are some of the issues that are impacting our elementary versus secondary. For middle schoolers, we found that one of the biggest impacts to them was the period of time of isolation, because we know that age group specifically, they're very dependent on that ongoing social interaction. And so that's what we found from them more specifically. We spent time talking with our principals. Our middle school principals actually elevated at earlier this year, saying, we're seeing our students in a very different way, and brought some very good ideas forward to discuss, things that they thought in seeing the issues on the ground, supporting them. So I'm going to let the staff, Mr. Davis and Ms. Rubin, speak to that specifically, because much of the learning came from collaboration with the middle school principals, and really looking at a mix of things around how we use the resources that were available and expand resources, but then also thinking about it from a program perspective as well. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Dr. McKnight. I'll open, and certainly I'm sure Mr. Davis can jump right in. I think the first thing that I'd like to say is that the middle schools of all of our schools are probably the schools that embrace the social, emotional, and mental health component aspects of our work the most. So they were forerunners and early adopters in the restorative justice practices. And what I really appreciate about that is that they were early to understand that the practices were not about discipline, but really about community. And so although they have quite high referrals, as you can see, to the crisis center, they also have a lot of supports that are in the school. I think what we're seeing, and we really appreciate the partnership with the crisis center, is really we've honed in on if those wellness spaces that the middle schools have, which the majority of them do have that, the majority of them have that restorative justice coach. Prior to that, they were the ones really, really engaged around the community circles. And I have to say, as a result of those, they oftentimes do surface issues. So that is what we want. And one thing that we were really cognizant about when we were deploying our resources was understanding that if issues are surfaced in a community circle, did we have the resources and supports in place to really manage those things? So outside of our school counselors, we now have the restorative justice coach, we have the mindfulness coaches, we have the mindfulness and the wellness spaces, and certainly now we have the social workers. So the issues that we are really referring out to the crisis center are those that really are significant, and they don't just end with that referral. Once that referral happens, what we've worked on with the crisis center is that wraparound end-to-end communication. So then we're working with the social worker, we might be working with our HHS partners to determine what are those extended services that the students may need. And to get into that a little bit more, I would love for Mr. Davis to really talk to you about that collaborative work, because it very much mirrors the vision around the wellness supports for all high schools, and certainly at the secondary level and that secondary middle school level, how we're working to build that in intentionally with our partnership with HHS. Certainly we consult out for some of the services, but I think being able to identify those significant issues is so important. So with that, I'll toss it to Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Ms. Rubin. I appreciate that. And good afternoon to the council. I appreciate the opportunity again to share with you some of the best practices that we are incorporating collaboration with our partners, in addition to our DHHS partners. And I appreciate the question for a number of reasons. As a former middle school principal, but also just having come fresh from visiting several middle schools this morning and checking in on some of our students and our staff and our community, I will start off by saying that I visited the two middle schools I went to today, it was during their lunchtime. And so one of the very basic pieces, which seems so simple, is having our students outside, helping to de-escalate, giving them the opportunity to really have that space to be outside, and to continue to interact with one another in an outdoor environment. So I just offer that, again, a fresh observation that I just had. But in continuing to work together, a couple of pieces that I would elevate that I think are important to know. I think it was mentioned earlier around our telehealth, working together as a team right now to really make sure that unmet need that we continue to hear in the opening comments. So we are working through that with our partners in procurement and also in the Office of General Counsel to really see what it is that we can do to make that unmet need, to do so in an innovative, I think I heard that word mentioned also, in an innovative way through our telehealth services. So that is an ongoing work that is in progress. I would also offer to you our therapy dogs. I think it's important to know that we're working very closely with bringing in our therapy dogs to work and support with our staff, but also with our students. I think that's an important component in a partnership that we have as well, looking for ways to de-escalate, but also when there is a situation that we're able to bring in resources to help to support our students and our staff as well. And I would really elevate what Ms. Rubin said around the mindfulness spaces that we have in the majority of our middle schools. Again, looking to have that, another question was around middle school, but looking to have that system-wide to incorporate that. But I would also add the advisory times that we have in many of our schools where we have our mindfulness lessons, where we talk about our well-being and how is it, again, looking at the idea of de-escalation, that we can continue to support our students in that way. So just a couple of examples, again, how we're working in collaboration to de-escalate and to provide supports to our students as well as our staff. I don't want to neglect our staff as well.
Can you share with me, so when you say the HHS partnership, and I know the Crisis Center was mentioned, what exactly is that partnership? What are some of the supports that HHS has been providing to help you address this crisis at the middle schools level?
So I don't know if you were directing a conversation back to MCPS, but I'll chime in for a little bit, Councilmember, and let MCPS, Rolando, whomever else join in around this. An observation about middle schools. Sorry, I thought my video was on. Sorry, my camera was on. There we go. An observation about middle schools is that one of the things that is true about COVID is that closing down the schools meant that kids were virtually at home for a year and a half, better part of a year and a half, which means that kids who were in elementary school came back to school and found themselves in middle school without what would have been a traditional transitional period in terms of development. And that, of course, adds to their stress level, no doubt. The second thing is that we are, the middle schools have consistently throughout the years referred more students to the crisis center than either elementary and high schools. In fact, it's almost a normal curve consistently over the years. And I think that is to MCPS's point that there is two things. One, linkages to learning, cluster schools, and the impact of having providers in those schools on a regular basis, plus a different way of thinking about younger children at elementary school and middle school levels that moves them towards, they have embraced this issue of social emotional learning, and they know crisis center is one of those options. The other thing that, in terms of what we are doing, I would point out, in addition to the crisis services and mobile crisis response and responses through the Street Outreach Network, when the school systems have called us to the table to be a part of that, a part of their support team. There's also a crisis stabilization team that we've funded for family services for many years now that does longer term stabilization than our traditional crisis center model has allowed. So they go out, they go mobile, they go to the schools, they go to homes and the communities with the children to make sure that those that end up in that program are stable. I would note that the MCPS didn't mention, but one of the things that I know that they are exploring is the use of community partners like Dads on Duty, for example, as a cadre of folks who, with some training and some guidance and some support, can actually be a therapeutic agent for kids to help them de-stress and to feel safe in schools. And then the last thing is that as we talk about this process of doing high school wellness centers, of building out high school wellness centers, we know there's an interim process in that. And one of the things that I've asked the team to look at is how we make the high school wellness center teams that we put in place regional, so that they can serve our high school teams, but as possible, serve in a consulting frame with our middle schools and potentially our elementary schools. There are other programs out there that I think are viable, especially for middle school and elementary school students, that I won't go into right now, but I think that's just a touch of the tip of the iceberg answer to your question.
And if I could jump in here, I just want to underline the role that the Crisis Center plays with referrals. As Dr. Kroll mentioned, for many years, the Crisis Center has collaborated with many of the schools, and as you have heard several times, the middle schools have sent many of the referrals, 45% of them. What happens once they get there is that there's a whole system of referrals at the Crisis Center. So the therapists speak with the families, with the parents, with the students who are coming in, and then they're referred. And to close the loop here, as Dr. Kroll mentioned, there's a crisis to connections, longer-term stabilization. So in some cases, the families may require that longer-term stabilization. And I also wanted to point out that the Crisis Center role with the schools goes beyond just these referrals. As you well know, there have been critical incidents that have occurred, a suicide in one of the high schools, and also a shooting, and the crisis mobile crisis outreach team has been present every single time to support the staff at the schools, to be present. We know that PYD has also supported. There is a strong collaborative effort that I think can only grow. I know that we are in conversations how to even strengthen further that kind of response, but I'm welcoming that kind of conversation, and I do believe that this kind of conversation that we're having today here can support all of those efforts.
Thank you. I blocked my camera because I think, oh, good.
So I was just,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to quickly mention the school and community-based youth services. I know there's been an exceptional push for us to be able to use those services at schools that are not serviced by linkages to learning, our schools that have high farm rates and that aren't getting those wellness center services. So I just wanted to mention that because that's been really instrumental as well.
Thank you. Yes. So I guess what I was going to say is that, yes, middle school has for a long time been an issue that we really do need to pay attention to. I think the numbers are very concerning, and Dr. Kroll mentioned this in the proposal that I had put forth. I did make reference also for the high school wellness centers to be able to somehow provide even almost like the hub model we used to do with the Judy centers. But it is concerning, and I think parents are starting to really voice their extreme concern, given that in some particular middle schools, again, fights and just young children just acting out has been pretty significant, has interrupted obviously the academic culture, instruction and things like that, but it's obvious that there are definitely issues, and I just hope that again we would act accordingly given the crisis, to look at those innovative ways to provide that caring adult connection and engagement right away, not waiting for a referral or something to that effect, because it's as many of you have so expertly said, it is as a result of that, prolonged isolation. And, that happened to my nephew. And he's pretty well adapted, but he that transition from elementary school to middle school happened during the pandemic. He is a pretty well adjusted kid, but obviously, I can see how this can be very significant of an issue with so many. So anyway, just wanted to put that out there as a real concern, because I'm worried that I'm not hearing a concise intervention or approach, and I think that perhaps we need to strengthen that somehow.
Thank you, Councilmember Navarro. I'm so happy you brought this up. I'll just pick up where you just left off. So just for a little bit of history here, 07-09, recession hits. We, at that point, had an after-school program in every middle school in Montgomery County. And then, the sky fell economically, and so we had to eliminate almost all of them. And we held the line with Title I schools, and we knew we weren't going to be able to serve everybody, and so we brought together this really incredible team of people, and that's what developed Excel Beyond the Bell, which was a partnership between community-based organizations, MCPS, Recreation Department, and that spawned a movement, and we've since been able to expand many of those initiatives since then. But the process that was undertaken to get to the development of the model was almost as important, if not more important, than the model itself and the execution of it. And what spawned the whole thing was, when we started that initiative, we asked kids what they wanted after school, and we were expecting sports, arts, theater. What we got back was, we want a hot meal. And so that is what triggered this whole awakening that led to the development of some pretty robust conversations, information sharing, and obviously all that was put on hold for 2 years through the pandemic. And so we did not have those extracurricular activities and opportunities that, particularly at the middle school level, our kids need, because there are fewer of those opportunities than there are at the high school level. And it's really based on the capacity of the various PTAs to provide extracurricular services. And we know those disproportionately impact schools that don't have those same opportunities. So to Councilmember Navarro's point, just to reiterate it, she said it so perfectly, but I do think there'd be value in us maybe this summer, after the school year, bringing the band back together again and seeing what we can do from a comprehensive approach, because every single one of the programs that have been enumerated are so important and have value and do great work. But given the unique complexity of the middle school level and where that falls in the development of a child, and how challenging that is for children, period, let alone on top of, dealing with all the stresses that they've had to deal with, complicates matters even further. And it then makes it even more difficult once they get to the high school level, because some ingrained challenges become even more acute as they get older. So I do think I completely, just long-winded way of concurring with Councilmember Navarro, and seeing if we can come back to this issue maybe as early as this summer after the budget's over, when we can catch our breath a little bit and see what more we can do. And I know we're already doing a lot, but I think that would be helpful. Ms. Yao, back to you. Sorry.
Okay. So the first item that we're going to be talking about is expansion of services currently offered at high school wellness centers to all high schools. It's been increasingly a focus of the council and brought up by Councilmember Navarro at various council briefings and work sessions. The council recently approved 3 special appropriations on April 19th that begin the work in fiscal year 22 on an interim phase of expanding mental health and positive youth development components of the high school wellness center model to all high schools, with the goals of having services in place no later than the start of the school year, but earlier if possible. So those appropriations allow MCPS to begin the process of procuring and or modifying service delivery space, and HHS to begin planning, hiring, and contracting for services as soon as possible. But now we're moving into fiscal year 23, and that will require, again, funding to carry forward various high school wellness centers initiatives. So the first one, though, is what the executive has recommended for fiscal year 23 in terms of the High School Wellness Center program. For 23, the executive recommends $920,565 $1,000 as an, gosh, I hope I have that right, as an increase adjustment to add the High School Wellness Center at Kennedy High School. This newly constructed center is anticipated to open at the beginning of the next school year. Funding for the program is included in school health services, public health services, and positive youth development in children, youth, and family services. There is a table in your packet that shows the breakout of funding for all the 6 high school wellness centers that are programmed in fiscal year 23. And council staff recommends approval of these proposed funding to open Kennedy High School Wellness Center as well as the other wellness centers in the county.
Don't see any comments from colleagues. Without objection.
Okay. So the next issue really then is expanding services at the high school wellness centers. The C has recommended $3,726,180 in fiscal year 23 to expand mental health and case management services at 10 priority schools in the county that do not have an existing high school wellness center. It also increases therapists and case management supports at existing high school wellness centers. And the schools that are targeted are listed in your packet and include BCC, Clarksburg, Einstein, Magruder, Northwest, Springbrook, and Whitman. And those are MCPS priority requests, as well as Blair, Blake, and Rockville, which were priority requests from school and community youth services. They were seeing more referrals than capacity allowed. In addition to the pros funding for the additional mental health therapists and case manager support, the executive also included funding for mental health first aid trainings and youth stabilization services through Shepherd Pratt's Care and Connections for Families. The executive's plan does not include expanded street outreach network services or a specific youth development program component through a community-based provider. Though DHHS has indicated that the development and implementation of youth development programming could be part of the expectation of the therapist and case manager positions that are being added. Councilmember Navarro has recommended that the core elements in service expansion include mental health, case management, street outreach network services, as well as positive youth development services. So if the Joint Committee would like to see that in the fiscal year 23 operating budget, we would need to add funding on top of what the CE has recommended to add these services. There's a table in your packet, but we have since received updated numbers that that show what is needed to actually expand the street outreach network component. There were some things that we left out. We just hadn't gotten from DHHS before the packet was published. So the updated figures would actually include 5.326 million to provide those service components to all high schools without a full wellness center. And I'm just going to note too that the executive's recommendation that increases mental health and case management in existing high school wellness sites, that amount is 1.1 million. And if the Joint Committee supports retaining this component, then there's no changes that need to be made. But if the Joint Committee would want to defer a decision on the component, then it could reallocate funds to offset the 5.3 million increase that I just spoke about.
Thank you, Ms. Yao. I see that Councilmember Navarro has her hand up, and Councilmember Juando would like to chime in too. Councilmember Navarro, followed by Councilmember Juando.
Thank you so much. I'm blocking my camera because my internet is unstable. I wanted to just share a little bit about the importance of the street outreach network. I think that traditionally, when we look at the description, I think it needs to be updated on what exactly this model and this program provides. Because for a long time, it seemed sort of described as if this was like a gang prevention program. In reality, over the years, it has really evolved into a culturally proficient, linguistically proficient, positive youth development program that, in my opinion, it is exactly what we need, particularly in this moment. And I say that because I have heard from so many young people who have come into contact and have been served by the Street Outreach Network that describe this interaction as feeling seen, as feeling that they can, trust, connect with somebody that can hear them out, that can provide the type of support, and in many instances, referral. And in many instances, it's just having that person, that, adult that they can connect with. And I believe that for us, given especially who our students in the school system, who they are, and when we look at the diversity in our school system, having this kind of model, in my opinion, is so timely and so adapt to many of the issues that we're seeing. Many times, I recall, in one of the boards of education conferences I attended when I was a member of the board, receiving this presentation on a school in the border between the United States of Mexico and Texas. Very, very, very poor, very, very, very limited budget, where they literally tasked every adult in the school with literally, they gave them a number of students, like, you're in charge of 10 students, your job is to check in. Hey, how are you doing? How's it going? Good job, etc. And they turned around test scores and attendance in an extraordinary way, because many times this is what our students need. And so in the broader conversation about our challenges around recruiting licensed psychologists or social workers, et cetera, and not having to wait, I feel like we have an opportunity here of a model that has been proven and tested, to then incorporate it into this interim phase, as we then add some more complements, more social workers, more psychologists. But having that presence there, I think it's going to be really important. And so this is why, from the very beginning, this is not a late proposal. This is something that I know we discussed. I know I discussed from the very, very beginning, that we are indeed very fortunate to have a proven model. And perhaps we don't call it Street Outreach Network, we call it School Outreach Network. And so why wouldn't we leverage that proven model if we want to be innovative, to ensure that then positive youth development indeed is incorporated into the school through the wellness center, while we build out the full complement. So I just wanted to reiterate that that's where that comes from. I think it's a worthwhile investment. I think that we would have to spend a lot more money later on remediating, and or God forbid, dealing with some extreme incidents. And so to me, it just seems like a no-brainer that we should invest and make this part of that holistic approach. Very much aligned with our community schools concept, very much aligned with our racial equity and social justice concept, because again, the vast majority of the Street Outreach Network specialists are folks that reflect our community. And so to me, again, I think that this could be a very important asset that we should absolutely leverage in this moment in time. And so respectfully request that we include this funding for this very important moment in time.
So was that a motion, Councilmember Navarro? Just confirming.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Juando, and Councilmember Juando is next up to speak, followed by Councilmember Rice. And I see Ms. Treadvance has her hand up. So right after Councilmember Rice, Ms. Treadvance. Councilmember Juando. Great.
Yeah, I see we have two MCPS. Folks. I love the different color Zoom hands, by the way, and just it's cool. So I always love to see the great diversity. And I do want to hear what they have to say, but I'll make a couple comments. Seconded this because absolutely we need a robust investment here. I want to put a kind of a complimentary, I think, point here. We do need folks who are, I think there's a term called credible messengers, right? That come from our community, have been involved in the criminal justice system, either have and have rehabilitated, and we do have some of those, and we do need a targeted effort. It's often said there's a small group of folks that are really at risk for committing violent crime, right? Particularly our young people, and we do need the whole set of services. So at one end, we need folks that can talk to those students in a real way, identify them, and in out of school, in community, and out of in school, and help divert them into services and programs and wraparound supports that'll keep them on the right path. And I think that has been an area where, in my experience, both growing up here my whole life and knowing tons of friends and having been arrested myself, and then as a council member, seeing the Street Outreach Network and how it works and talking to the folks on the ground, I think we do need a more of that work to happen and in a deeper way, and to expand the capability. We also need all these other set of services in our, for kids, to keep them on the right track and to give them safe space and to prevent things before they happen. But there is a subset, I think, where we can do a little better, in my opinion, on creating enough capacity and having the amount of credible messengers, and paying them enough, and making it a more professionalized career track type thing, where it's not just like some young person and we pay them a little bit. No, they need to actually have a professionalized career track in that for the very serious, very at-risk students. And I know we all know that. I just want to put a fine point on it because I don't think we get to say it enough. And then obviously everything else we're talking about, we need to do too. One of the reasons I was so excited that Luis and his team had picked up, along with the Collaboration Council, the therapeutic services that we funded over a year and a half ago now, in connection with the resource officer conversation. But this was independently needed in either way. And the council unanimously supported the set of special appropriations that allowed restorative justice training to expand all 40 high schools. We heard that earlier. The therapeutic recreation, or 40 middle schools rather, the therapeutic recreational services, that we need to double and triple and quadruple down on that as well, for all sorts of students. And I think so. I support this appropriation and more, but we really need to get into the weeds, not necessarily today, on what the different needs are at the different points in the continuum, and I've pointed out a few, and I think, and we need to commit to it long term. It can't just be spot treatment. If it's the investment will absolutely pay off. I agree with Councilman Navarro. If we professionalize, compensate, and get the right people in the positions, particularly at the extreme end, and fund it for a long time, that will have big benefit. And then we also do the other things along the prevention pathway. So I just wanted to mention that because I think this appropriation is right in line with that theory, and this will be an important investment that we need to commit to in the long term. So I appreciate that, and I'm curious to hear what the MCPS folks say as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice, followed by Ms. Treadvance, and then Mr. Everett. Councilmember Rice.
Well, I'm not going to be too long because I certainly want to hear from MCPS, and I think a lot of what I feel has already been said. Let me just say this, that I think that in line with the conversation that Councilmember Juando and I had leading into the resource officer discussion, this was a commitment. I made a commitment to the community and to the school system that in addition to us talking about some sort of engagement officer, resource officer, whatever the case may be, that we would also provide a robust support service model that was there when it came to case management, mental health. I agree with Councilmember Navarro. Street Outreach Network does so much more than the name Street Outreach, but certainly ones in which we're reaching our kids, and that's really what they do. They reach our kids, and so from that standpoint, I think this is right in line. It's important for us to make sure that we're doing this. It is the balance. It is the thing that is necessary to make sure that we are serious about stepping up our support for our kids from a mental health standpoint, and making sure that they have the positive reinforcement. And as I mentioned before in my opening comments, about having that mentor, about having that positive light, that person to be able to just have a conversation with them about what is in the best interest of that student, that's important. And so, everything along that litany of different types of descriptions of the folks who would have that interaction with these students that is encompassed in those position titles, I think is incredibly important to the success of not only our students, but also our staff who are trying to reach them and make sure that they can focus on what they need to, which is getting a great education. So thank you.
Thank you. So I apologize, Councilmember Navarro. Did you want to chime in now or wait until after staff speaks? Okay, so I'll come to you after Mr. Everett. Great. Ms. Treadvance, followed by Mr. Davis.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I just want to state that this conversation makes me so happy, and I'm so grateful that there's consensus in the room to really see the value that the Street Outreach Network does. And that program, I'm proud of all of the programs within my portfolio of HHS, but that one in particular because there's lived experience there, right? And lived experience trumps, I think, any degrees, any pieces of paper, any accolades that we might have, because valuing that, talking to somebody about the path that you have walked and then showing them how you came across the other side of it, I think it's something that is important for youth and adolescents to be able to sit and hear and watch adults be vulnerable and be real about stuff that sometimes we often don't want to speak to. So I think it most definitely offers an array of support that I think our adolescents and our youth need today. There's that mentorship aspect. I saw a beautiful video. Luis had shared a snippet of photos from an event that they did, and I saw young men cooking, and I saw team building, I saw partnerships, I saw gender norms being broken, right? I saw different cultures, I saw community cohesion happen. So I think there's a vast continuum that I think just that level of in-person outreach and support, people talking about their lived experience, there's that mentorship, there's that community engagement piece, there's that violence prevention piece that happens at the individual, the interpersonal, and the community level. So I think there's a wealth of value that I think this piece and this component offers, and it just makes me feel really, really grateful that there's a room of folks in leadership in council that actually sees that value. And most definitely, we do need to rescope a little bit to make, not to forget the violence prevention piece, right? Because I think the mental health aspect is a root cause of a myriad of other things that are plaguing our youth. So I just want us to be mindful not to just pathologize or view this from the lens of mental health, because that's one root cause of many. And I think this conversation about Street Outreach Network talks about the violence piece, violence prevention, community engagement, advocacy, all of that, all of those components that help address the other root causes that contribute to some of the issues that we're seeing, or some of the issues, complex issues that are plaguing our adolescents today. One element outside of that I did want to offer, just for consideration in the packet, I know that what's offered there is strictly just staffing in terms of the staff the team members who are deployed to the schools, but just some consideration as well. And we had a brief discussion with Ms. Yao for operating costs. I think and it's most definitely growing. We need to build in and reinforce the leadership level as well, so that we can ensure that we have adequate supervision, not just the line staff who are deployed and the teams in the schools, but we need to also just consideration that we also need to build that leadership level in order for that structure to be sustainable as we continue to expand this work.
That makes sense. Before going to Mr. Davis, I'll just note one other thing with regards to the Street Outreach Network. We've been talking about middle school and high school. They're one of the entities that bridges both. So they often work with siblings who may be in the high school and may be in the middle school level. One of them has experienced trauma, and they help make those connections, and then referrals to various other community-based organizations. And they've played a huge role in developing other creative programming components. The programs at Imagination Stage were in many ways founded through the vision of Luis and his team when they set the call out saying, we need more arts-based activities, somebody please help. And Imagination Stage came in with Oyeme, and others responded as well. So they are, in addition to the direct services, which everybody has articulated so well, there's a myriad of other components that they add value to strengthen the overall ecosystem of these kids, which is really important to note. I'll also note, just logistically, to confirm, Councilmember Navarro, we're talking about reconciliation list, right? These are items that just so that I've got the correct language down, so that, because obviously there's a lot of really terrific programs we're going to be looking at in the end, but just wanted to confirm that's what we have in mind.
I guess Ms. Yao can confirm that.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
And also, I think it would be good for Ms. Yao to confirm what it is exactly that we are placing in what line item, because to respond to Mr. Advance concerning, as Ms. Yao said that she had received some updated information, we want to make sure that whatever we're doing actually is sustainable. And so it is going to be important. And the only other thing I will say to my colleagues is that, if this goes on the reconciliation list, is of course would have to be, let's understand that this is connected to the conversation about this moment of crisis. Mm-hmm. And let's make sure that this doesn't become sort of like, some symbolic thing that we're doing here, and then we just don't support it. This is a down payment on, the emotional, the mental health, the physical health of our students. And once again, I will say this time and time again, 74% of MCPS students are students of color. And the disconnect between thinking that somehow we should not prioritize models, service delivery models and intervention that speak to those unique needs is a mistake. So here we have a real asset that, again, in the scope of everything, this is literally a very small amount that will go a long way to address these issues. So I just really want to reiterate that, given that I know how it goes every year with our reconciliation list. But if Ms. Yao could just confirm that we are indeed supporting the updated table, and then if Mr. Advance could confirm that speaks to what she had brought up as a concern.
Yeah, and just as the seconder of the motion, I would just also ask Councilmember Navarro, based on the Council President's guidance, that I think this would also, I would hope, be base budget, to your point of sustainable. I don't, as opposed to one-time funding. But, I think we should probably need to make sure we're clear about that as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Juando. So such an important thought. Councilmember Rice, Chairman Rice will agree that, previous councils actually during budget have always stepped up to strengthen Street Outreach Network, because we were so clear on the importance of this program. And so I thank you for saying that, because it means that you'll carry the baton forward for the next council to ensure that the proper funding and support and capacity is giving. And I'll say, look, I'll just be blunt, because this is my last budget. There are a few, not a lot of jurisdictions that have similar programs similar, program models like Street Outreach Network, and they really, really lift those programs up. They elevate them because they understand how incredibly important and effective they are. And I've always felt as if we tend to be a little shy about elevating and giving the Street Outreach Network program the place that it deserves to have in a county like ours. So I hope that this will be a turning point, and that we don't have to do what we have had to do in the past decade, which is each year nickel and dime it and try to put additional resources and try to give it. It's we can't talk about racial equity and social justice when we do that to programs that are being led by people of color and are actually producing amazing results. There's a disconnect there, and so I hope that this will be indeed a turning point. Thank you.
Mr. Davis, followed by Council Vice President Glass.
Thank you, Council President Alvarez. I just wanted to elevate, and I'll try to be additive, the themes that were mentioned and offer some voice data from my team. And as I said, I just come fresh to you from one of the middle schools that actually is working with the School Outreach Network. I will start to call it, as Councilmember Navarro said. It's just so important. And actually, this principal asked me, she said she had worked with the Street Outreach Network in her previous experience as an assistant principal in middle school several years ago. And one of the resources that she could not do without was working with the Street Outreach Network. And she continued to work with them even prior to a crisis that she was navigating most recently. So I just thought it was important to hear. This was a middle school principal. I've heard the same from a high school principal just prior to spring break, and even got to watch the students coming into the media center to work with the Street Outreach Network. I would also offer one of our school psychologists, which of course a member of the team that I support, and actually Ms. Trevance and I just exchanged messages a couple of days ago about having the Street Outreach Network come and present to the Student Family Support and Engagement team, just because of the interest of this school psychologist who had reached out to me as one of the supports of a recent crisis and said, this is a resource that needs to be elevated and shared with all of our schools. So I just wanted to offer again some voice data from those who are very close to the work. I thought it was important for consideration.
Thank you. Council Vice President Glass, and then Mr. DeAndrea would like to speak as well. Council Vice President Glass.
Sure. I'm glad I just went after Mr. Davis, who spoke in the firsthand account about how impactful this expansion would be within the middle school. And that was what my question was going to be. I was hoping Ms. Navarro would, in making the proposal, I was just trying to understand if it was focused on street outreach for high school or also for middle school, recognizing the data that had been shared before also showed the incredible need for middle school. And I think that the chair tied the two beautifully in talking about OMA and talking about those programs. And I'll be additive to this as well and say, the incredible work that Carol Trawick and the Trawick Foundation has been doing for more than a decade now, recognizing that it is the middle schoolers who are the missing middle in so much of this conversation. And I just wanted to make sure that they are not lost in this support.
Thank you so much, Vice President Glass. I will say this. So from the very beginning, because we, recognizing that it was going to be very difficult to staff up so quickly, licensed social workers and psychologists was going to take a little while. I had envisioned that we would instead, we could start right away with working with Luis Cardona and Ms. Treadvance and Dr. Kroll to enhance the, school outreach network component. We can start there, right? But you make a very important point, and I would not be opposed to the Joint Committee perhaps receiving additional information from our staff to see if we could do an expansion into the middle schools, some additional capacity there. I don't, it would have to be up to our, staff at HHS, et cetera, to see whether this expansion into the high school wellness center could have some connection, some support, some service delivery to the middle school. I think there could be some, but there's no doubt that the middle schools are in crises, and maybe there could be, a separate proposal to address the middle school and enhance the street outreach network there as well. We have heard from MCPS how impactful they actually are, and how MCPS staff actually has requested that they come because they have such a broad and holistic model. I would not be opposed to considering additional dollars to have at least an expansion of Street Outreach Network into the middle schools as well.
Sure. So thank you for that expansion. And so one of the thought that I have is recognizing that the proposal is already going on the reconciliation list, and fully support it going there, and will support it beyond this joint committee conversation. And then to think of adding upon that for something else, I would actually prefer to hear from MCPS, to hear from Street Outreach, what they think the best approach would be, recognizing that these funds should go to that effort, but whether it should go to the high school or whether it should go to middle school, again, I keep circling back to the presentation at the beginning of this conversation that sort of the greatest need or the greatest numbers were at least in the middle school. And I don't want them to get lost if we're focusing this on high school and we're not even sure that this funding is there. I mean, so that's my recommendation, or at least that's my preference, that I would prefer to defer to MCPS and HHS or Street Outreach Network to basically inform us of the best way to fulfill the need in which the spirit of this committee is supportive of.
Okay, I appreciate that suggestion. So Mr. DeAndrea, and then I'm going to go to Ms. Yao to see how she has summarized what she's heard so far and make sure that she understands where we'd like to go. Mr. DeAndrea.
Thank you very much, President Albernos, and good afternoon, council members. I just wanted to provide some context in terms of additional framing regarding the bigger picture of how we collaborate with DHHS regarding supports. I specifically wanted to highlight the work that's happened with the Reimagining School Safety and Student Wellbeing, or RSSSW work group, over the course of the past really 10 months or so, because within that work group, as Councilmember Rice noted earlier, there were definitely conversations around school resource officers and community engagement officers, but coupled with that were significant conversations around how we support students' mental health. And so the final report from that work group will be coming out the next couple of weeks. And as a result of that, there will be an ongoing work group that will take representatives from MCPS and DHHS and other stakeholders working together to discuss the best ways to implement those recommendations and partner together. So as we talk about Street Outreach Network and a variety of other initiatives, there have been extensive conversations, and that work group over the course of the past 10 months or so had not only DHHS and MCPS and representatives from the police department, but also a number of other community stakeholders that contributed to making recommendations about how we work together to best support students' mental health, and with a priority focused on middle and high school, and especially recognizing the challenges at the middle school level.
Thank you, Mr. DeAndrea. Just a quick time check, everyone. We're an hour and a half in. We've only gone through the first line item, and there's still four more after this. We're going to hear from Dr. McKnight, followed by Dr. Kroll. Dr. McKnight.
Thank you so much. I actually lowered my hand because I know we were going to come back to Ms. Yao on this, but I just wanted to thank you, Councilman Glass, for saying that, because I do believe that Dr. Kroll and I agree. I saw his hand up when mine went up. I could guess that he was going to say that, yes, we would like to be able to talk more about that specifically and how we would expand or support in the middle school. When we think about the programs that we put in middle school, and we think about Street Outreach Network and so on and so forth, we want to be very proactive in the middle school, so that ultimately the way that we're serving right now in the high school would be, a decreased need. And so that is something that we would have to be very intentional about in terms of how we plan that. And as the program currently stands, I mean, we are working mostly with high school, but we'd want to really think about how we build out that proactive measure for middle school specifically, because as close as they are to high school, they are very different individuals at that age. And so we want to be very intentional and specific in terms of the services that we provide to them. And based on what Mr. DeAndrea just also presented, I mean, many of the programs that we're talking about, like Street Outreach Network, as we were thinking about socio-emotional wellness and mental health support in the spirit of how does safety fit into that context and how does it not, Street Outreach Network was also being discussed, as Mr. DeAndrea said, in the RSSSW space. So we just want to make sure all of these pieces are coming together so that we're not overlapping. I guess I would say in a way in which we're utilizing resources in the most coordinated effort in the way that we can. So Dr. Kroll, am I right in speaking for you that we would like to
Pretty close, Dr. McKnight. Look, my take on this is that we have been talking about high school wellness centers, this in the frame of high school wellness centers, but I have never thought about this as high school wellness centers. I've thought about this as mental health services to the students that we have to serve in schools. So while we're talking about it in the frame of high schools, my thinking has always been, and the team's thinking has always been middle schools, elementary schools, and looking at the services that are needed and how do we make that work. So the recommendations and proposals are therapists and social workers. There's always an intent to look and think across the board about what the students' needs are. I am those of us who follow and have followed positive youth development and well-being for a decade or more know that going upstream and getting kids earlier saves us time, energy, money, and pain and suffering in kids. The extent that we can get them in middle school and touch them in middle school makes perfectly good sense. And then the last thought is that there are we will be talking with our Street Outreach Network team and with the department to figure out where we go with this, and with MCPS to figure out how best to do this. But the other thing I would say to you is that there is no single option and answer for this. This is about how do we put together a best package of services and supports. Street Outreach Network, mobile crisis, therapeutic spaces, mindfulness training, restorative justice, all of those pieces have a role in this process, and that is the coherent message that we want to give you, is that this is a multi-pronged approach that has to be taken in dealing with this.
Thank you. So, Ms. Yao, if you could attempt to summarize, and just if Councilmember Navarro, you can confirm that you're comfortable with the summary as the motion, that would be great.
So what I've heard is that the Joint Committee would like to move forward with putting on the reconciliation list 5.326 million, and that would entail 9 therapists for non-priority high schools without high school wellness centers at a cost of $1,053,000. Then case managers for non-priority high schools without high school wellness centers at a total amount of $892,323. Then that would also include a combined amount of $1.765 million for the Street Outreach Network. That would include 12 community service aid positions for SON. It would also include operating expenses to support them. It looks like outreach, etc., as well as infrastructure, including a program manager 1 and program manager 2 position, which also includes some operating expenses, and 6 15-passenger vans to support the work of those positions. Again, and finally, it would also include 1.6 million for community-based providers to deliver youth development services. So that's the total of the 5.326 on the reconciliation list. With I also heard that there was interest in having DHHS and MCPS look at those figures to report back out on supports that they can provide within that budget to support middle schools as well. Is that what?
That is what I have put forth as the high school wellness center expansion. I think that we did have a, I would say ancillary conversation about making sure that middle schools could also be served, but I just would not want to walk away thinking that this, that this proposal would be considered to be one where we're serving high school and middle schools, because obviously there is a lot of need. So although there can be some, I think, integration, I would just be I have a little bit of concern now kind of watering all this down to then be not just, we already know it's going to take a while to get the high school wellness centers up to par in terms of how we have the ones in operation. It's going to take a little while to get there. And so I would be a bit concerned about the intention here being that this is now supposed to serve both high school and middle schools. That's the only caveat, the only asterisk that I would put there, because then I feel like we would be watering down even further, an approach that we know it's going to take a bit to build up. That's my only concern. My original intention was not necessarily to make this a proposal that would be to serve both high school and all the middle schools. If we want to be more intentional about middle schools, maybe we need to think about what that would look like and whether we are going to need, a bit more, some more resources. So that's my only caveat, but I'm open to seeing, what can come back. So, but what you stated is what I had envisioned for the high school wellness, for the expansion for high school wellness.
Great. So we have a motion and a second with some homework between now and then to further provide some context for the rest of our colleagues on the council to consider. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous among both members, both committees. Great. All right, that moves us on to the next item.
So again, Councilmember Navarro's proposal envisions full-scale wellness centers at each high school, moving past the interim phase. And this would require changes to the High School Wellness Center and Expanded Wellness Center PDF. Ms. McGuire has been working on those pieces, and she will be briefing the Joint Committee on the various options related to the CIP issues.
Thank you. And I'll just briefly summarize. So there is a need to program some additional funding in the FY23 year of the PDF to complete the build out that is being begun with the FY22 supplemental that the council just approved. That was envisioned to bridge over both years. So that would be the first part of the capital funding that would be needed to, again, complete the facility modifications and just continue the build out that is being initiated in the FY22 CIP. And this, again, is to prepare spaces in every school to accommodate and to house the services that we were just speaking of in 23 as in the upcoming school year as the interim phase is implemented. There is a second set of decision points for the council in terms of what funding would be useful and appropriate to program at this time into the CIP to reflect that longer term vision that Mrs. Navarro has outlined and that the committees have discussed around continuing permanent expansion of the High School Wellness Center model in all schools. That really is a question for a couple reasons. One, obviously, the council needs to determine the funding level. But two, as has been referenced here in multiple aspects of this discussion, there is a lot of planning left to do, right? There really is a lot of work to do together to scope out exactly how these services are going to be implemented in the permanent phase, what the right combination is. There's needs to also be feasibility studies school by school, because each high school, as we know, is so different. It has a very different footprint and a very different experience within that school, even of the physical surroundings. And so the question then becomes what amount of planning funds are necessary to get that started, and then what level of funding would be appropriate for the council to demonstrate at this time, given the number of questions not so much questions, but again, just given the amount of scope work that's left to do to really determine what those actual building costs are going to be in the future. For the proposal, we did a very, sort of a broad macro stroke estimate of how those funds could be programmed in the 6-year CIP. And if you look on pages 10 and 11 of your packet, there, again, are a couple of different options that the committees may want to consider in terms of the FY23 funding, again, to complete the build out for the interim phase in this coming school year, then to move into the planning, feasibility study, and design phase for the first rounds of building out the full wellness centers, and then again to anticipate that additional build out of other wellness centers over the 6-year period. I'll pause there, and I'm happy to go through any more specifics of any of those funding options that would be helpful.
No, that is helpful. I'm looking at those options at the moment. Colleagues, do we have a preference?
Is there a staff recommendation?
Yeah.
Is the so there are a couple of points. The first staff recommendation, again for FY23, would be option 1 on the bottom of page 10 of your packet. $5 million to complete the interim phase modifications and $3 million to conduct the planning and design for the first high school wellness center sites. This, I think, would be council staff's inclination to really be able to get the planning money going and the planning processes, most importantly. And then again, since construction would be beginning in 24, the council would certainly have the ability to hear. I'm sure we'll be getting, as has been discussed, a number of updates throughout the year, and the plans then can feed into those design plans and construction plans and some more robust cost estimates for 24 and beyond. So that's sort of council staff's inclination, just to be sure there's robust planning and come back with cost estimates when they're more available. Certainly, again, there are other options to provide that fiscal space for construction also, if that's the committee's interest.
That sounds pretty reasonable. I would label that get the ball rolling option, but more than just get the ball rolling, just really set us on the right course, and then with more information on what the additional expenditures will be in a better position to put that forward. But it goes without saying that we are committed to doing this. We've all been on the record, and although there will be an entirely new council soon, it's obvious that this has to move forward. But I do think, all things being considered, it makes sense to approach in that direction. That's just me. But Councilmember Navarro, as the originator of this really important plan, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so let's see. My professional thought would be that sounds like the most reasonable approach. My experience thought it would be that anytime there's a transition, a lot of things get lost. That's been my experience. But there's, I will trust that the next council will remain committed to this important, and critical component. I don't know if there are any, if there's any way to include some kind of language in the PDF. I know that it's always subject to appropriation, but we in the past have included language in the PDF that signals intent, so that there is a, sort of legislative history of sorts for future councils or something like that. Is that something that we could do if we went ahead with, I guess it would be option 1, but that included some language that kind of signaled what the intent of the council was when this was proposed?
So I would be happy to, absolutely. And as you're saying, often language in the PDF is a helpful way to document the legislative history. I'd be happy to draft that if that's the committee's preference.
Ms. Beck, I see you have your hand up.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Beck. Councilmember Navarro, were you done?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think that I would be comfortable with taking the cautious approach, given that we are going to need additional information, as long as we include language in the PDF that reflects the intent of the council.
Great. Ms. Beck, what did you want to ask?
I did want to just ask one thing from a technical perspective. The executive had been planning to support this, but we were waiting for some numbers that are just sort of now available. But what our hope had been was that this next sort of phase 2 in high school wellness could be a separate project, a new project, and perhaps that could help meet Ms. Navarro's desire to signal a somewhat different intent. It would make it easier from a management perspective as well. And I will also work with Esty and Keith The executive had been holding some funds for this in 22 and 23, and we will be clear with them about how we had seen that working out. And then as they sort of manage the final reconciliation, they can take that into account as they choose.
Ms. McGuire.
So we're absolutely look forward to working with the executive on affordability considerations that would make this more possible. So we're happy to do that for sure. And in terms of the separate project, I think again we can continue to discuss that with executive staff, but I do think that we may want to plan for our transitions at once into the next year, but we can continue to discuss that. Obviously, the intent is here to carry this forward.
Mr. Chairman, so Ms. McGuire, I know that I think point 3, right, was the information that had been discussed in terms of what it would cost to realize this expansion, correct?
Yes. So our working estimate, Ms. Navarro, was approximately, we were assuming about 18 million a year to accomplish 4 a year, right? So it was a very ballpark estimate, and that 18 million included both construction but also planning for approximately 4 a year. And so I should highlight also that option 2 that we put forward was to put in the planning funds that we talked about for 23, but then also perhaps program some additional construction dollars in 24, again, as a signal of getting started in 24, knowing that those numbers would be updated when the planning process is more realized. But that was the working estimate.
So it seems to me like option 2 is the most sort of middle ground between doing very little and then 3, which is the full blown. Since what I'm hearing, I mean, I had been told that what we were going to consider was option 3. Now I'm hearing that there needs to be more work to figure out the specifics, et cetera. My worry is that I don't want this to become one of those things that then gets lost in all this process. So it seems like maybe 2 gets the ball rolling while more information then is gathered to, and then the council, of course, has an opportunity to always, amend CIP, et cetera. But it seems to me like, option 2 makes it a little bit more of a realistic project. And following up on what Ms. Beck said, it could be a separate program.
And so
am I describing that correctly?
Yes, and I think that what we would again, the working estimate was the 4.5 million per site, and the working estimate was also that approximately 4 could be accomplished a year. So that plus planning gets us to that $18 million figure, and so that would be what I would put forward as the 24 recommendation in option 2. And certainly didn't mean to overstate the level of questions remaining about the initiative, only just that, again, as has been discussed here, there is planning to make that more specific, and so the scope of work for each school will be more refined.
Okay, so you're confirming that option 2 would be the middle ground approach for now. Okay, so I'd like to move option 2 then.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second for Councilmember Juando. Any discussion, colleagues? Councilmember Rice.
So I just want to make sure, because I know that we're dealing with a constrained CIP right now where we're trying to get in elementary school projects. So I just want to understand where that falls in the context of what this would be, especially when it comes, because I thought that Burtonsville Elementary was starting in 24. So if somebody could just let me know where we are with that.
So, and I'm sorry, I don't have all of my CIP spreadsheets with me here, but yes, certainly there are pressures in those early years of the CIP to line up those various projects, particularly to push back to the requested schedule some of the projects that have been pushed out. Burtonsville and Highland View are the 2 elementary schools that the Ed Committee had previously discussed as a priority to restore into those early years. We are obviously still working through reconciliation. We received some good state aid news, but again, certainly there are still a number of ads that need to be reconciled and would need to be adjustments will need to be made to accommodate all of the projects that the council has added in its review.
All right. So from my perspective, look, this is important and we need to do this. We also need to do Burtonsville and Highland View if possible. And so I'm really kind of torn between just making sure that we can do both of them. That's, from an education and culture perspective, and I don't want to speak for the committee, but it was very clear in our deliberations before that those were priorities that we set as an individual committee for trying to get reinstated. I know that MCPS had stated that as a priority as well. So we just need to understand where we are. If we can do both, that's great. I'm all for it. But do just want to understand where we're going to put our, kind of eggs in the basket if we only have a choice of one or the other. And I know that we had gotten some relief from the state, but not sure if it's enough to actually accommodate what it is that we're looking to do here. So if we could get that information as soon as possible, that would be helpful. But definitely support it if we can do both. But did want to make sure that we were reminded of where the education and culture's priorities already said that we were when it came to CIP for those years. And so if we're going to do something different, that's fine. We can discuss that, but that's where we were up until this point. So.
Yeah, that's why I thought that option 2 was a middle ground option, because obviously option 3 puts a lot more pressure. And this was the discussions that we had with you, Ms. McGuire, to make sure that we would be able to move in a cautious fashion to get this done while not interfering with a lot of the other things that we had already discussed. So, very happy to hear additional information from you, but this was what we had requested. It's not like this is just being discussed for the first time, but it seemed that this actually is a pretty good middle ground space to be mindful of the pressures of the CIP while moving forward with this important project.
Great. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of that option, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous among both committees. Next.
The next item is the Bienvenidos Newcomers Initiative. The recommended 23 funding for the initiative is $4,421,227. It's an increase of $1,013,086 from the fiscal year 22 budget after it was supplemented mid-year. The development and growth of this initiative has responded to the unprecedented increase in the number of unaccompanied migrant children and asylum-seeking families traveling through the southern U.S. border and arriving in Montgomery County. The table in your packet on page 11 breaks out the proposed 23 budget, and executive staff indicates that increases primarily reflected in 23 result from annualization of budget amounts that the council had approved already. There's also a decreased cost for programming and events for newcomers, youth activities, but there's also a corresponding increase in the number of staffing for the Street Outreach Network, and it's assumed that they will be able to complete a lot of that work. Council staff understands that the Bienvenidos budget items are loaded as one-time items that will be reviewed for inclusion in future budgets based on existing needs at the time. And just a report on positions filled, that the four CSA 3 positions targeted for Street Outreach Network, one of them is filled, and other contracted positions, including a program coordinator, 3 family support workers, and 1 administrative support worker have been filled. Council staff recommends approval of the proposed funding for this initiative.
Councilmember Juando.
Oh, I was just going to say I move the package unless, yeah.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Navarro. I just want to reiterate my deepest appreciation for the partnership and alliance on this. It's produced a lot of really terrific work and builds off of the foundation that we've been establishing over the last 12 years with the lessons learned. And as we've heard through media reports, there is another wave coming. And so putting us in the best position to support these families who are in crisis is the right thing to do. So thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Councilmember Navarro in particular, for working so collaboratively and everybody on this really important issue. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of this committee recommendation, staff recommendation, please raise your hands. And that is unanimous as well. Next.
Next is linkages to learning. The executive recommends $11,400,498 and 9 FTEs for linkages in fiscal year 23. It's an increase of $3,667,281 and 1.5 FTEs from the fiscal year 22 approved budget. The executive is recommending 3 adjustments. 2 of them are new linkages programs. One at Odessa Shannon Middle School for $359,427. The second at the new Gaithersburg Elementary School for a total of $271,199. The additions correspond with requests made by MCPS for additional linkages services, and are, they support the additional need for mental health and social services targeted at the most vulnerable communities. There has been space built out as part of the CIP project, and these programs are anticipated to start at the beginning of the next school year.
Thank you. I've got Councilmember Navarro followed by Councilmember Rice. I'll just note really quickly, just point of privilege here. We recently lost Fran Brenneman, who passed away, of course, was instrumental in helping to really continue forward the linkages program, and also was instrumental in the development of the Kennedy Cluster Project. And I think her role in positive youth development over her entire career was extraordinary. She is deeply missed. And I felt it was appropriate to just mention and recognize her, especially in the context of us talking about carrying forward such an important program to her and all of us. So with that, Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you for those words about Fran. You're absolutely right. She definitely owned and nurtured and carried forward this very important approach, because it has been an approach that lives on, and she absolutely, I think, can rest in power, knowing that she's set the stage, and it's up to us to continue this legacy. So for me, this one particular piece, I wanted to ask, as we have been discussing issues around middle school, linkages to learning plays also an important role in middle school. It is that model that we, started to incorporate in the elementary schools and middle school. And all of you know that, lots of conversations and me pushing that anytime we would have any school expansion or any construction, that we should also always incorporate some kind of flexible space, because we know that it's much cheaper to do that from the very beginning. And lots of conversations about, the so-called prioritization list and all that stuff. So there's a lot of history here as well. But I was curious, though, given the conversation we just had about middle schools, whether there are any opportunities here with linkages to learning to work on that kind of like, again, hub model, right? So if we are going to expand wellness centers to high schools, and we have some linkages to learning in some middle schools, but could there be some type of coordination there to enhance linkages to learning in middle schools, even if it's the linkages to learning light or something to that effect? Was there any conversation? Are there any opportunities to even think through that, given what we just discussed about middle schools?
So a quick answer from me, Councilmember Navarro, is that one of the things, when I said earlier that we were always thinking about what happens with middle schools and our kids around this, one of the challenges in this whole process and this whole conversation has been figuring out which school has what and where, what school resources are already in place, and how do we use the expansions to complement those. And so the short answer is yes, I think it does make some sense. You raised linkages to light, which is a model that we talked about somewhere along the lines 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago. That never really took off, but it was exactly mental health and case management as a strong additional component to schools where we didn't have linkages programs as a way of building it out. Because the linkages model is it's a Cadillac and a wonderful model, but it is also a costly model. But given the needs we had then, which we have now, even more so, finding some way of doing this in as expeditiously as possible might argue for us revisiting the linkages light model.
Thank you. I do hope that, this could be something we can follow up on. I totally agree with you. I think we get real stuck on particular models and we want to just continue that and replicate that. Sometimes I think it's important, but then, other times there's something to be said about adapting. And also, I'm hoping that census of the schools in terms of what's in every school, that we can do that ASAP, because we've been talking about this for a long time. And I'm a little bit surprised that we don't have that census done yet, because that is going to be really critical to figure out then where it is that we need to fill the gaps. So anyway, I'm glad to see that we do have the Shannon Middle School, just coming along great. And Gaithersburg Elementary School number 8, but looking forward to see how we can integrate some of this as well to provide supports to middle school as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Rice.
Yeah, so I'm going to pick up where Councilmember Navarro left off, because I think that it's incredibly important for us to recognize that this is directly tied with our blueprint for Maryland's future as well, in terms of what our priorities are when it comes to building community schools, right? And so from that standpoint, my understanding is that, and I think this was reflected in the packet, Ms. Yao, that some of that concentration of poverty grant that comes via the Kerwin funding will actually help to allay some of these costs, but something that is to be assumed in pretty much every single one of our schools moving forward. So to your point, Councilmember Navarro, I think that, again, the need for us to do that inventory to make sure that that information is provided is a part of what I would deem our current coordinator, both the county and MCPS role, would be spearheading in terms of getting that kind of information sooner rather than later, because we are in the first year of full implementation of Blueprint. And so because of that, we need to know where we stand when it comes to being in adherence to the Blueprint law. And so from that standpoint, I couldn't agree with you more. You and I have worked hand in hand on this for quite some time in terms of speaking ad nauseum about linkages. You coined the phrase linkages light in terms of us saying that, look, even if we can't do it exactly like linkages, we need to do something to provide the services. And it's just very interesting that our previous conversation around what it is that we're doing regarding wellness centers is in that same vein. It's like, look, whatever we can do at a school, let's do it, because we know that any additional service that's being provided to these students is going to be a plus over what it is that they have now, right? So building that additional capacity at any school across the board, it doesn't have to be the full-fledged. We know that it's still going to be beneficial to those students. So I couldn't agree more. I thank the county executive for putting this in the budget. I thank the staff who's continued to work on this. Dr. Kroll, I know this has been a challenge for you from a budgetary standpoint as well as from a staffing standpoint. So we appreciate you continuing to work on this and continuing to hear us press you on, when can we do more? When can we do more? When can we do more? It's like that broken record. So thank you for your understanding of how we're passionate about this, but we know and we see it enshrined in state law now about why this is so important and why it matters so much. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So then without objection, colleagues, we agree with the staff recommendation.
I think Dr. McKnight had her hand up.
Oh, my apologies, Dr. McKnight.
Oh, thank you so much. And I am definitely trying to be very sensitive to time. I know we got a good fresh start, so I'm trying to be selective. But I did want to make a comment about this. As Councilmember Rice and Councilmember Navarro just stated, I think what is very important to highlight is that we are making the connection to a lot of the CIP efforts that you just mentioned, because it is easier to implement many of these programs at the start of opening a school versus figuring out how to do it later. Now, sometimes there are dynamics that occur that make the need in a school grow over time that we may not be able to identify when the school first opens. So I think the answer here is that we have to do both simultaneously. But I think Gaithersburg Elementary number 8 is a perfect example in terms of knowing that, this is going to be a benefit to that school as they get prepared to establish themselves in a way that's meaningful. If there's an example of that. Another reason we're going to have to make sure we're monitoring this data and being very particular about it, and we're committed to doing that in MCPS, is even earlier we started the conversation around middle schools that have an intense need. And even in that, you'll see which middle schools receive the most referrals. And I'll use the example of referrals to the crisis center. But you don't see Odessa Shannon Middle School, yet that is a school that we identify that, looking at crisis referrals is not the only factor that we look at, but it's a number of different factors that we have to look at that helps us identify the school. So being intentional about, and maybe that's more of what we'll talk about when we come forward later, but being very transparent and clear about what are the data points that we're collecting that allow us to identify in collaboration with the Department of Health and Human Services which schools are appropriate is a big part of that. I didn't want to save time, I didn't want to comment on this earlier, but again, a connection between the CIP and the wellness centers is key. I mean, we all know Burtonsville is an absolute priority to the school system. That community have been very outspoken and have shared, just some of the changes that they've had to adapt to over the years when we think about the needs of that school. So we don't want one priority to compromise another. So I appreciate the council just really saying, what option will allow us to provide some flexibility so that our community won't feel like we're compromising one priority over the other. And I think, again, that's something that we'll have to continue to do in looking at the relationship between the CIP and all of these programs, because there is a direct connection. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. McKnight. That's an important point. Okay, moving on to the next item.
Actually, I just wanted to just mention
We
about
need a motion, right?
I said without objection, but
sorry.
Just with the multi-program adjustments and the linkages to learning program, it's rather high. So I just wanted to explain what was in it. It's $3,036,655. What's included in that includes the inflationary increases for the providers. It includes annualization of funding that we got through Kerwin, the concentration on poverty grants, community grants moving to the base, as well as the mental health and case management support at schools that don't have full high school wellness centers that the county executive proposed. And that's why the number is so large. Okay, so moving on to school health services, the executive's budget proposes $36,116,369 and 331.49 FTEs for this program. It's an increase of $3,287,000 and 28.04 FTEs over the fiscal year 22 level. The executive has recommended a package of adjustments to address school health services infrastructure needs. These set of increases are a continuation of multi-year efforts to bring school health staffing up to the level of support to provide for the health and safety of MCPS students. The first one is the conversion of 10-month school health staff to support summer programs at an amount of $830,253. It also adds 6 nurses to address staffing shortage and meet staff policy targets at $646,547. This would bring school health nurses so that there would be 1 at every high school and middle school and 1 at every the largest elementary schools. And then the last proposal is to add 2 positions to support training of school health staff at $170,959. These would provide consistent training of school health staff, and would provide for more timely and consistent training and mentoring of new staff, which hasn't, because of the level of staffing and the response to the pandemic and all sorts of other complex needs, hasn't occurred, I guess, to the extent desired. In addition, there's also funding for mandated school health services at the new Gaithersburg Elementary School, and that's for $175,347, and then multi-program adjustments of $1,464,041. That includes compensation changes as well as the somatic health services for the Kennedy High School Wellness Center. Council staff recommends approval of the recommended adjustments for school health services.
We don't see any comments from colleagues, nodding heads, however, so then without objection, we support the, Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you. I do support this particular recommendation. I failed to say something earlier, so I want to be on the record regarding the expansion of the wellness centers and the CIP conversation. I just wanted to know for the record that when I made this proposal, the reason why I also recommended that we move quickly with portables was being cognizant of the fact that, yes, our CIP is stressed, and that, we have used portables in the past for things like the Judy centers. And so when we get back to this conversation in full council, I would like to understand then, Ms. McGuire, to include that as another option so that we can contrast and see what the pressure would be on the CIP, because again, that was my original proposal. It was for us to, being cognizant of the pressures on the CIP to instead look into utilizing portables as an alternative going forward. So just so that, the council could have that in front of us in terms of the cost. Thank you.
Noted.
Okay, so the next item is the cluster projects. The cluster projects began with the Kennedy cluster to address the root cause of racial and ethnic achievement gap. There are now at Kennedy, Springbrook, Paint Branch, and Watkins Mill clusters, and the budget for those programs is shown on the table on pages 14 and 15 of your packet. For fiscal year 23, the executive is recommending a total combined amount of $819,705 for those cluster projects. It's a slight decrease in terms of personnel. There's a little bit of shifting there, but council staff understands that it will not impact the service delivery. And DHHS staff is here to explain, how they've arranged that, if the committee is interested.
Yes, but before we get to DHHS, Councilmember Navarro.
Thank you so much. So indulge me, since this is my last time talking about this in this context. December 4th, 2007, there was a memo that Dr. Jerry Weiss sent to the members of the Board of Education. I was president of the board at that time. This is when we were proposing the Kennedy Cluster Project. It was a joint proposal between the chair of the Education Committee at that time, former Councilmember Valerie Urban, and myself as Board of Education president, and the superintendent. And basically, it was described as a strategic initiative of the Montgomery County Public Schools to eliminate the achievement gap for African American and Hispanic students. It goes further to say that the charge of the Kennedy Project, a joint effort between MCPS and the Montgomery County government, is to create a service delivery model for African American students that will accelerate the progress already underway to significantly improve the academic achievement for these students. And the team was to work collaboratively to identify the necessary services to address the root causes and barriers that inhibit or discourage African American students from achieving their full academic potential. Also, identifying changes and services that may be needed within the schools The project team will identify and provide recommendations to the county government regarding the coordinated services needed to complement educational services and eliminate communication barriers between and among the school system and county department and agencies. And this was to basically request a appropriation of $250,000 to be used for research and project management. The board put forth $150,000 and the county council put forth $100,000 in its FY08 budget. And I wanted to share that because I think it is imperative that we understand that these types of models have been put in place at moments when we recognize the importance of the collaboration between county government, school system, and other agencies. And the purpose of this model was to then learn some important lessons around what interventions actually worked so we could scale that up. In other words, instead of every year trying to guess what were the best interventions to address the academic achievement gap, the idea was that this would be something that would yield that information for us, just kind of like the Harlem Children's Zone. So, you know, for those of you who are going to come back, I'll be happy to share with you. It's a very robust memo. It's kind of like a research paper, but I think it is important to understand where we've been and where we still are. Because at that time it was a budget of $250,000. Here we are today. It's not that much different per, you know, for what we have in place. And the project never was implemented at Fidelity, but it might be maybe useful for future councils to take a look at that template and see whether there is an opportunity there. Everything we've talked about today is kind of connected, you know, linkages to learning, multidisciplinary approach, wellness centers, multidisciplinary approach, cluster projects, multidisciplinary approach. Can we then put all of that together to make sure that that we are leveraging versus working in silos? So thought I would share that because that was one of the reasons that propelled me to pass the racial equity and social justice law, because I was stunned that many of the things that I was working on with colleagues back in 2006, 2007 are still relevant today. And that, to be honest, is a little bit of a concern to me, that somehow we don't seem to truly eliminate these disparities the way that we should. And it's not because there had not been models in place. I think that we need to be more structural and more systemic. So with that, I support what has been put forth, but thought it would be important, since this is my last time, you know, looking at this item, to share a little bit of the history about how this came about in 2007.
Well, I got appointed as the director of the Recreation Department on December 8th, 2007, and I participated in all those focus groups. And I commit to you, Councilmember Navarro, that if I'm so fortunate as to come back on the next council, I will carry forward and provide the same context you have been providing so helpfully these years, because it is important that we remember where we've been so that we don't repeat the same mistakes, but also, more importantly, leverage what has worked. And had we been able to implement the Kennedy cluster with Fidelity, had the recession not happened 2 years after we had spent so much time and energy building this really robust and incredible infrastructure, I think we'd be in a different place than we are right now. I really honestly believe that. Although we've made some great strides, it's worth remembering all of that. So thank you for bringing that up, and I certainly will not let us ever forget it. So we've got staff recommendation. Any questions, comments, colleagues? Nope. So then, without objection, Ms. Yao.
Okay, so the last program is Child and Adolescent School and Community-Based Services. For fiscal year 23, the executive is recommending $6,690,002. It's 15 FTEs for this program. It's an increase of $1,277,438, or a 23.6% increase from the 22 approved budget. There are recommended adjustments in the program that include replacing a funding that council put in for ARPA that they funded through ARPA funds for therapeutic recreation services and mental health services for MCPS students, and council staff recommends approval of these items as these services continue to be needed as the council had identified, during the pandemic. And there are also multi-program adjustments of $782,438 included in this program, and it includes inflationary adjustments, contracts, as well as the restoration of the therapeutic recreation services.
I see no questions or comments from colleagues. Going once, going twice. Hearing no vote. Councilmember Juando.
No, just going to move it, and I'm excited about the extension of these services. And as we talked about earlier, they're critical part of the wraparound. So it's awesome. Thank you.
Got a motion. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Navarro. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And I'm going to go out on a limb and assume Chairman Rice supports this too, but Chairman Rice, he may be having technical difficulties. So I'm going to try to filibuster here for a or two. Everybody looks really great today. Hope we have great weekend plans.
I think he might have fallen off. I don't see him.
I see him.
No, he's on. He's on. Yeah, he's on. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And this is the last item, right, Ms. Yao?
This is the last item.
Okay. Let me text him. Just give me 1 second.
And happy Earth Day, everybody. Yeah.
Councilmember Albornoz, you're gonna sing for us while we're in this intro.
There he is.
Hey, sorry about that. Yes.
That's what brought him back. The possibility of me singing. Councilmember Rice, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All right. Yes, that is unanimous among all of the committee members. So with that, anything else, Ms. Yao, Ms. McGuire, Ms. Nicole Rodriguez?
That's it.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Good work today. With that, our joint committee session is adjourned. Have a wonderful weekend.
Pikes Peak 10K race is being held April 24th, 2022 from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. The following